Hello, BookTube. All right, we're moving on. We're in part 3 of our 7.5 Q&A. We're at John Petter. Is it only in America that people are prone to intellectual fads? Absolutely not. No. In your opinion, what is superior? Who is superior, Jordan Peterson or Richard Dawkins? They aren't even comparable. Who is superior as what? They aren't even comparable. Richard Dawkins, it might be abrasive, but he's a genuine thinker. He's a genuine... He's contributed to the intellectual discourse of his day. Jordan Peterson has only muddied the intellectual discourse of his day, and had a worse effect even than Dawkins of creating an army of acolytes who are just the most insufferable 20-something men imaginable. A Peterson acolyte, you can spot them a mile off, and they are so insufferable. Oh my God. It's not a question of, I always say that 20-something men today are aimless, famously aimless, and that they need direction. But with Jordan Peterson acolytes, it's even worse, because his 20-something men need to be deprogrammed before you can give them direction. They're not comparable, in my opinion. Karen Ivoniak says, do you read/watch the news, especially these days? I do. Yeah, I still consider it important to stay informed, even though the news only outrages. I still consider it important to stay informed, although since 2016, this has been the only interval where I have advised friends of mine to stop looking at the news, because it was tearing them apart. It was ripping apart their psyche. Just stop doing it. Just abandon it completely and live without it. You can't affect any of it. All it's doing is having a negative effect on you. But not me. I still consume the news. Let's see here. Luke and Jennifer Higgins say, number 1, have you ever belonged to any literary societies or author fan clubs? No. I am a book critic. I am the natural enemy in the wild, prowling through the tall grass to authors everywhere, so I don't join their fan clubs. Number 2, I enjoy the Arabian Nights, but I'm never sure which translator is doing the original work the most justice. Can you please recommend a preferred translator? Burton, Lane, etc. Well, Burton for readability. What is it? The Modern Library does a nice squat abridgment of his Arabian Nights that is readable and has all the highlights. Penguin Classics does a beautifully annotated, wonderfully done 3-volume Arabian Nights that I would also recommend, but only if you want the whole immersive experience. Burton is good enough for you to get a sense of why this work has captivated so many millions of people over the years. And number 3, our daughter Amelia, hello Amelia, is curious to know if you or Frida enjoy swimming. If so, where? Lake, pool, Black Lagoon? Frida does not enjoy, she's never tried to swim. She doesn't enjoy being in the water. She doesn't enjoy her baths or being wet by the rain. But I don't think that's permanent. I think if I had worked on that, I could change it. Especially lately, I've noticed that when I'm giving her a bath, she's very, very smart. She's as smart as I am. She's human level perception of the world around her. And she is sensing, you can see the tumblers in her mind when I'm giving her a bath. Part of her is saying, well, this is bad. I'm being wet. I don't like this. But another part of her mind increasingly is saying, yeah, but it feels kind of good. And the after effect feels great. So maybe I do like this. So maybe she could get used to swimming. Maybe she would like it. I don't know. It would be a long process to do. I myself love swimming. Absolutely love it. If there were a pool of some kind near me that I could use, I would pay a health club annual dues to use it. But as far as I know, there is no one anywhere nearby. As far as I'm concerned, all the pleasures of swimming for an hour in a pool are negated. They are reversed if it's an absolute hour-long ordeal to get from the pool back home. It has to be relatively close, walking distance to me, and I don't think there's anyone nearby that is. I would love that so much. Oh my God, so much. For years and years and years, I did live close enough to big pools to do that. There is no greater peace than just swimming and letting the whole world just slough away. Oh my, and it's really good for you. I miss it. I will, when this video is over, I will conduct a quick check to see that I'm right, that there are no public pools or health club pools anywhere near me. But I think I am right. I will check again, but I think I am right. Let's see here. Kat Kim says, how often does a book make you upset? Have you ever thrown a book across the room? I know that's a standard thing, standard phrase. I have never thrown a book across the room. Why would I do that? I'm just going to go over and pick it up. Anyway, right. And also, unlike a lot of readers that you see on the first generation of BookTube, I am actually an adult who has control over his emotions. But books upset me all the time. All the time. Yes. If I'm going through my normal day's reading and I'm not feeling anything about the books, that is a bad day's reading. I want to be either overjoyed or upset or provoked in some way or other. At least once a day, a book will upset me. Usually because the author is lying. I don't get so upset at an author's ignorance, because to a certain extent that's out of their control. But if they know better and are lying, that infuriates me. It just infuriates me. That happens a lot. Let's see here. Tommy Regisserm says, thank you for your channel. It's a blessing. Well, you're welcome. I'm mostly grateful myself. Who speaks for Boston? Or put it differently, what do you like about Boston? I mean, apart from the Brattle bookshop. A lot about Boston. I like the size of it. I like the nature of it. I like the way that it's not content with itself. It's never content with itself. It's never boring. I like the fact that I can count on Boston to be looking at social policies, political policies, to be really examining them and maybe not taking the most progressive route, but maybe taking a route that surprises the rest of the country. And the history, I love the town. Absolutely love it. Elisa Cocciarelli says, do you like Philip Larkin's poetry? Not particularly, no. Do you think he deserves a bit more attention? How much more attention could you get if you're Larkin? I don't know how that's possible. What do you want him to have? Let's see here. PHXSNS says, number one, quick thoughts on Ann Tyler and Jane Smiley. Ann Tyler has always struck me as just a resolutely C-list author who has been pumped and pumped and pumped with the expectation or the claim that she's an A-list author. I've never seen it in her books. Never. And Jane Smiley, you don't want to get me going on Jane Smiley. We have a long and checkered past. And question number two, do you have any favorite concert films? Woodstock, Stock Making Sense, etc. Is there a recognized concert film of Simon & Garfunkel, Concert at Central Park? I don't know if there is or not. That's a hell of a live concert. I don't think I do have any favorite, no. Matthew L. says, number one, will we ever get to see the weekly Sunday Bible? Let me do that over again when the drag race is over here. Will we ever get to see the weekly Sunday Bible reading series on your channel? The people want it. Do the people want it? I would love to do that, do a reading from the Bible every Sunday. I would love to do that and talk about it, but I don't know. Is there an interest in that sort of thing? I get the impression that there's not. Then question number two, what are your thoughts on the art of Hieronymus Bosch? I like it. And question number three, do you enjoy Gargantua and Pantagruel? Yes. The synopsis has always made it sound a little unappealing to me, but too many literary figures I respect have spoken highly of it for me to put it off much longer. What say you? Don't go by synopses. Read the synopses to get a lay of the land for what you're going to encounter, but then pick up an English language translation, just read it. Or whatever language you read it in. Just read it and see. Give it 100 pages and see what it does for you. Let's see here. Kirk says, I watched a video of yours in which you praised the magnificent weepy conclusion of the film The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Oh yes. You'll never be tired again. What are some other favorite films of yours from the studio system era? Philadelphia Story. It doesn't get nearly the attention that His Girl Friday does, but Philadelphia Story will absolutely be a winner in your family movie night. Absolutely. All ages, both genders, all demographics. No matter what their predisposition is, you put that movie on for family movie night, and you are all going to watch a movie you are going to love. Absolutely love. But also His Girl Friday, 12 Angry Men, a whole bunch of them. Witness for the Prosecution, another surefire winner of a movie. Surefire. Let's see here. John O'Doherty says, are there any writers whose prose and poetry you have equally loved? I noticed FSG publishes some of Elizabeth Bishop's prose. You hit the nail on the head right there. And outside of her letters, I have never heard much about her occasional prose. Is she perhaps an example for you? Elizabeth Bishop would be a good example. Marianne Moore be another example of someone whose poetry and prose I like pretty much equally. Pretty much. Edna St. Vincent Millay be another one. Let's see here. The Steve Doctrine. Has a few questions. How are we doing for time? We're fine. Okay. Number 1. Did you like the recent War and Peace adaptation that had Lily James as Natasha? Didn't see it. Out of this new one, the Anthony Hopkins one and the Hepburn one and the 66-67 Soviet one, which do you like the most? I don't like any of them. Question number 2. Keeping on TV. Would you recommend the TV version of Dostoevsky that your Yevgeny Mironov has done? I've never seen it. Particularly the adaptation of The Idiot. It's a pretty pricey to watch, so I'm wondering if it's worth it. I don't have any idea. And question number 3, finally, did you think you could ever live stream a Brattle visit? We could help you pick out heaps of books you don't need. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how. I've often thought about doing holding the phone up and doing 5 minutes of narration in the Brattle lot. But the phone that I used to have that had ample space so that wouldn't just cut out in the middle died. And the phone that I have now has virtually no space at all. And B, I don't know that wouldn't ruin or dim the Brattle lot browsing experience for the other people there. I don't want to do that any more than I want my own experience to be dimmed. So I don't know that that's in the cards unless I go there before the lot is open. Let's see here. Tyler Curtis says, hey, you've often talked about your global travels. What made you want to travel so extensively? Doesn't everybody want to travel extensively? And did you ever get homesick? No. No, I did not. Because I didn't have a home. And places where I live. Home for me is dogs. And my dogs came with me. And I also had lots of other dogs with me. Home for me is dogs. So I never got homesick. No, not at all. Because every time it came time when the whole world started to get quiet and it was time for me to read at night, every time that happened and all the lights went down and everything turned off and everybody went to sleep, I would be laying back on a pile of pillows or a pile of blankets or the hull of a boat, and I would be surrounded by sleeping dogs. Now, the dogs might change from year to year and place to place, but that is still home. So I never felt homesick, no. Blue Sky says, how is your novel/writing coming along? Well, I finished Camp NaNoWriMo for July. I work in Lethals, my first attempt at a police procedural. I won't call it a success. It was pretty bumpy. I learned a lot. I think I learned a lot. And I don't have an active writing project of my own right now. I think the next active writing project of my own that I do will be actually NaNoWriMo in November. Instead, I just have these writing projects that I'm working on with other people, and those are going well. Those are burbling right along. Will you do more writing videos? I should. I should do a writing video every day. I should do that. I should do more AuthorTube videos, and I don't. And what are the best tips on pacing that you can give? It's going to sound cliche, it's going to sound hackneyed, but read it out loud. That's actually a tip that I would give for any kind of writing, for any aspect of your writing. Read it out loud. You'll know right away when you're reading out loud if the pacing isn't fitting the events. That's what you want. That's what we mean by pacing, is that the pace of your reading fits the events or is beautifully counterpoised to the events, where it not only doesn't fit the events, but is sort of a sarcastic commentary on the events. And the only way you're going to know that is if you read it out loud. That's when you'll know what to trim and what to add. Let's see here. Mac has a barrage of questions. How are we doing for time? Okay, we're fine. Number 1, do you agree with those who claim that Henry Kissinger is a war criminal? Absolutely. He broke international law. He broke American law. That makes him a war criminal. I don't care about his political leanings or the political leanings of his bosses. He intentionally broke national and international law. That makes him a war criminal. He did it in the pursuit of war. So, question number 2, do you support Kamala Harris as VP? Still think they'll lose to Trump? Why? Well, I don't know about support. Kamala Harris is 70 years younger than both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and that's great. She's not a creature of just cardboard, cartoonish evil like Mike Pence, and that's great. She's a human being. A normal human being who has the better part of her life ahead of her. She's the only one in the race. That's nice to see. I was kind of hoping that would be the rule rather than the exception for the Democratic side of the ticket. But Pete Buttigieg dropped out. My beloved Beto O'Rourke dropped out. All sorts of young, capable politicians who I'm sure we'll see again all dropped out. And we were left with Bernie Sanders actually having a heart attack during his campaign. We were left with Elizabeth Warren, who has a plan for everything, but also sounds like your grandmother who has a plan for everything. And we're left with Joe Biden. who's not exactly the most mentally focused candidate in the world. Kamala Harris is a very different breath of air from all of that. So in that sense, I support her. Absolutely. She's quick on her feet. But it doesn't ultimately matter, because my answer to your second question is, yeah, Trump is going to win. Obviously, he's going to win. It's not going to be possible for people to vote. Their votes are going to be discarded. He's already doing what he is going to do in November if he loses. If he wins by a landslide, which I think is likely, then he won't do that. And in that sense, the country will be spared. Just that. That will be the one positive, is that the country won't have this litigated in court. Because when he says at one of those rambling, weird press conferences of his that you won't know who's president on the night of the election, and that if it's litigated, it could happen, it could take months or even years, what he means is when he litigates it. And if you know anything about Donald Trump's personal history, you know that this has been his pattern for 50 years. He has used the legal system in New York as a personal weapon against other people. He's used litigation, not legal rulings, not lawsuits, but just litigation. Litigation is designed to take time and eat up money. You are wearing out your opponent by financial burden, by just the onus of paying out your lawyers every month. You're wearing them down so that you will either work them into bankruptcy or you will force them to do your will. Donald Trump has been doing that for 50 years. In everything. In every way. It's allowed him to get his way in everything. So that he welches on a debt to a bank, the bank forecloses on the debt, and he sues the bank for foreclosing. And because he has found, because there are a number of judges out there who will not throw these things out, these personal vengeance lawsuits out just sight unseen, Trump tends to win those things. He tends to win. He tends to wear his opponents down by litigation until they finally just throw up their hands and sign a non-disclosure agreement and give up. And he is definitely going to do that with the 2020 election. He knows no other way to behave. Unless he is physically stopped, legally stopped, he will do that. And it will work, is the point I'm making. It's worked with everything else he's ever done. It will work in this case too, unless he is stopped. Unless the judges, even all the way up to the Supreme Court, say, there is no standing here. There is no basis for a lawsuit here. You're wasting the court's time, and if you don't stop immediately, you'll be fined for contempt. Very few judges have done that to Donald Trump in his lifetime. I would like to think that would happen, but I know it won't. I know it won't. And it won't matter anyway, because his victory will be large enough so that he won't need to litigate it. And it will be large enough because he's already shown you what he's going to do. He's redistricting key voting districts in key battleground states so that they are 90% Democratic, but they will return Republican results. He's removing mailboxes and shutting down polling places in key districts that, if voters showed up, might swing the state against him. He's doing all of that. It's all illegal. It's all voter suppression. It's all against the law. There are laws on the books that make it illegal to do, but no one's holding him account for it. So he can do it. If no one will hold him to account for it, if all of his underlings will do these things, even though they know what they're doing, then it will work. And if your plan is to illegally steal the election, and no one is stopping you, then you will illegally steal the elections. But anyway, question number 3. I know you generally dislike philosophy. No, I universally dislike philosophy. I hate it. But what are your thoughts on the deontology versus utilitarian argument? It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Break it down into what it's actually saying with those stupid multi-syllable words, and you get nonsense. Literal nonsense. So I don't have a stance on it. It's just ridiculous wordplay. It's navel-gazing. Question number 4. Who are some of your favorite film directors? Michael Bay. USA. Michael Bay. 6 syllables. Number 5. Do you view Lyndon Baines Johnson's presidency in a positive light? Perhaps his domestic policy. Well, his domestic policy wasn't entirely his own. I view it in a positive light. Yeah, but his presidency? No. Bonus question. Is the reason that you hate George Washington so much because he was mean to you in your childhood? How dare you? How dare you? I am a smoldering, A-frame, washboard abs, 28-year-old. Okay? No, I hate George Washington because the rest of the world loves him. I hate him because he's the subject of hagiography that has no grounding in fact whatsoever. The minute you poke in to the souffle of the George Washington story, your finger goes straight through. There's nothing there. Great military genius? Bunk him. Great president? Bunk him. Above party politics? Bunk him. Noble personally? Bunk him. All of it. All of it is just airy fluff sprayed on top of the hard kernel of a bottomless avarice for money and a bottomless cruelty towards his slaves. that is the George Washington story. Anyway, let's see here. You're a joy on this terrible website. Oh, come on. YouTube's not terrible. YouTube's lots of fun. There's an endless variety here, all for free. No, don't call YouTube terrible. Let's see here. How are we doing for time? Oh, we got time for a bit more here. B. Satayopas says, how do you feel about the 19th century French literature? I largely love it. And more importantly, who would be the Gallic trollop? Oh, that would be Balzac. Surely that would be Balzac. Orthia NZ says, let's see here. My questions are, have you ever damaged library books? Depends on what you mean by damaged. The librarians out there would say that me writing, I annotate my books, whether they're library books or not, in pencil, very neatly and very legibly, but the librarians out there would say that that is damage. But I've never done anything worse than that. Any advice on getting dirt from the pages by the spine in a hardback? A hairdryer? Electric hairdryer will often work. Just lay the thing flat and go at it that way. It's tough. It can be tricky to do. Jonathan Noel says, do you enjoy rap hip-hop music at all? No. Have you read have you read much video game to novel adaptations? Any of them good? The only one I've ever read is Assassin's Creed, because I was urged by a number of video game fans who told me this is a video game to book adaptation that you will really like because it's about history and stuff, and it was dumb. I read 2 of them and they were absolutely dumb. I haven't been hugely motivated to read many more. Let's see, how are we doing? Okay. Bill Rutenberg says, let's see here. Congrats on 7.5 milestone, and thanks for doing these videos. They are always fun to listen to. If my family and I can get to Massachusetts area in the coming years, when the pandemic is over, of course, what are 3 or 4 places you would recommend visiting? Could you please explain why you recommend it? And don't worry, I already have the Brattle bookshop on my list. Well, the number 1 crumbling Boston monument that you must visit is me. Okay. The number 1 thing you must do is make Steve the center of your Boston visit. So there are places that you should see. You should definitely go to Fenway Park if you come during the summertime, right? And Fenway Park is open. You should see the Museum of Fine Arts and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum right across the street. But you should see them with me. They're so much diminished if you don't have my boring, droning commentary the whole time. And the Brattle bookshop, and maybe a couple of other places, Boston Common, for instance, the Swan Boats, the public gardens. Sorry, I got something itching my nose. All of those things are all worth doing. Maybe even walking around on Beacon Hill, go to the Boston Public Library, my beloved Bates Hall. Maybe the first 2 floors of the Boston Athenaeum, which are open to the public. I'd be happy to take you there. The point is, Steve. Steve has to be involved. He has to be with you. Let's see here. How are we doing for time? Okay. Noah Richardson says, I have 2 questions. First, what do you think is the good introduction to reading poetry? And what are some of the strategies that differ from reading prose? I wouldn't use any strategy that differ from reading prose, but introductions, I would just read poems. See what you like and extend from there, rather than read theoretical introductions. That might do you more harm than good. And second, since you deplore Jordan Peterson and other dude bro philosophers, where do you believe young men should look for advice and personal development? Right here. They should look to me. I will help. I will help enormously. Lots of experience at it. Let's see here. The room note says, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but I think you've mentioned that you don't care for Kerouac. I don't. I don't care for Kerouac. Are there any beat authors you do like? No, there are none. Mr. Putler Gollum says, as we know, you have... Oh, what happened? As we know, you have been to Lithuania, probably in Soviet times. Did you visit Klaipėda, which was Memel, on board a ship, or Vilnius? I've been to both by a ship, especially Vilnius. I spent a lot of time in Vilnius. Kaunas was a largely closed city for foreigners because of protests and nationalistic feelings. Can you remember something positive from your time in my country? Many positives. Many, many positives. The gorgeous architecture and the wonderful people. I had a great time in Lithuania. Patrick O'Toole says, greetings from Tipperary. Oh my. Thanks so much for your great videos. Just a question regarding complicated books. Do you ever find yourself reading a book and not understanding it or being a bit lost? Sure, happens all the time. If so, do you recommend using companion-type books, or do you just read the book and take what you can from it? Well, I have the benefit here that a lot of people don't have, in that I have extra time to read. I read very fast, and I have a lot more time to read than most people do. So if I read a book and I'm just not, most of it's just not, I'm not getting what the author is trying to do, I never use companion books. I will go through it and get what I can. And then a week, a month, 2 months later, I'll read it again. And I realize that's not a practical solution to a lot of people who do have much more carefully guarded reading time. It just works for me. Hannah's Books says, do you have any interesting stories from travels in Senegal? Yes, I do. You feel free to tootle on over here sometime when the plague allows. We will uncork some wine. Frida will scream herself hoarse at you, and then I will tell you Senegal stories. I have 4 of them, I believe, and 2 of them are actually interesting. Marcus has a barrage of questions. Number 1, we'll finish with him. Can you recommend any good histories on non-musical theater that span from the Greeks to the 20th century? That's not an easy question to answer off the cuff in a Q&A. I could make such a list or a video about them. Number 2, any good single-volume biographies of Orson Welles? There's no Orson Welles books to read except Simon Cowell's, and that is multi-volume. So if it has to be single volume, then pick the volume of Simon Cowell's books on Orson Welles. Pick the volume, the years of which correspond with the years in Welles' life that are most interest you, and read that one. But I would read the whole thing. It's amazing. And question number 3: do you remember when you first read over 100 books a month? No, I don't think I do. It was a long, long time ago that I broke that sound barrier. So in the modern era, it would have been when I stopped traveling. So that would have been 1989. I don't know. It's been a long time. Let's see. Okay, and we'll wrap that up, and we'll be right back for part 4. Is it? Let's see.